Senator Madigan.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation, Senator Ronaldson. Australian steelmakers and fabricators operate in an ethical environment. This means that their product quality has to be of a high level and quality documentation must be accurate. Compliance with environmental, workplace and other requirements must be thorough. Many overseas steelmakers and fabricators have no such boundaries, so their costs will always be cheaper. Many are owned by unelected governments and can freely dump low-cost steel on the world market. Australia will lose its steelmaking industry if the government's current open-door policy remains in place for much longer. What does the Australian government plan to do to safeguard the Australian steelmaking industry and Australian jobs?
The Minister for Veterans Affairs, representing the Minister for Industry and Innovation, Senator Ronaldson.
Well, thank you, Mr President. Can I thank Senator Madigan for his question and acknowledge his long-standing interest in this matter and for providing me with some notice about the question. Mr President, the Australian government is aware of the pressures on Australian steel industry, particularly given the tougher economic conditions in China and the resulting oversupply in the global market. The government is working closely with the steel industry to deal with these issues, with a focus on the long-term future for Australian manufacturing and jobs. However, successive governments have found that restoring high tariffs is not a sustainable option for the development of Australian industry, as high tariffs impose additional costs upon both producers and end consumers, slowing productivity growth. Raising barriers to trade could result in retaliation from our trading partners and jeopardise our export industries, as well as undermine Australia's treaty obligations to trading partners. The Minister for Industry and Science, Ian Macfarlane, recently held a meeting of key stakeholders in Wollongong, including the New South Wales Government, local federal MPs, BlueScope Steel, workers, unions, the local council, the business community and the university to develop a long-term economic strategy for the steel industry and for the Illawarra. The government looks forward to continuing to work with the steel industry and the Illawarra community in a bipartisan manner. I understand that industry can request a safeguards investigation by the Productivity Commission, but that is up to those involved in the industry, and that the instigation of the Minister of Industry, the Minister can refer a safeguards request to the Productivity Commission for investigation. This evidence would have to provide prima facie evidence that the industry is facing material damage, and this damage is directly resulting from an increase of imports of steel. It has actually nothing to do with anti-dumping.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Madigan, a supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. There are numerous examples of imported fabricated steel arriving in Australia containing major defects. This steel is being purchased by both private enterprise and government. It is obvious that state government and private enterprise cannot control the quality of imported steel. What does the federal government plan to do to protect the citizens of Australia from collapses or other unintended consequences of poor quality imported steel?
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr President. Again, can I thank Senator Madigan. The government shares your concern in relation to non-conforming building products, and at the Building Ministers Forum in Melbourne, I think it was in July from recollection, there was a meeting of the forum. At that meeting, ministers agreed on a range of significant outcomes that will benefit the Australian building and construction industry and the wider community. One of the key themes of the Building Ministers Forum was addressing non-conforming building products, and during the meeting the Commonwealth put on the table options for better information sharing with Customs and Border Protection that would assist state and territory regulators better manage and respond to non-conforming products coming into the country. The Commonwealth and state and territory ministers also agreed to establish a working group of senior officers who will report back within 6 months on the issue of non-conforming building products. I'm pleased to say this working group has been established and we'll be meeting in the coming months to work through the forward plan. The key task will be to work up strategies to minimise the risk to consumers,
The time for answering the question has
community.
expired. Senator Madigan, a final supplementary
Thank you,
question.
Mr President. With the current oversupply of steel on the world market, dumping into Australia is rife. It is a lot easier for an importer to dump overseas steel than it is for an Australian steel maker to mount a dumping case and prove dumping. Why has the government allowed a situation to develop where the playing field is skewed more in favour of Australians, foreign steel dumpers than Australian steel makers, and what does the government plan to do about it?
Minister.
I'd like to see FMEU buying.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, can I thank Senator Madigan? Look, the claim that our anti-dumping system set in favour of importers is totally incorrect, and our regime is seen as one of the strongest and most robust in the world. And as Senator Madigan knows, earlier this year the government introduced a suite of reforms to the anti-dumping system, and some of these include placing a greater onus on overseas businesses to cooperate with investigations, more stringent deadlines for submissions, cracking down on uncooperative exporters, better assistance for Australian businesses, addressing circumvention of anti-dumping duties, reducing red tape and improving certainty and improving the anti-dumping merits review. I think it is fair to say, Mr. President, that we are absolutely committed to ensuring that our anti-dumping regime is a strong one, that it does comply. We are the government that has done something about this, and the interjections from Senator Carr before only confirm that
Thank
they
you,
did
Minister.
absolutely
The time for
nothing
answering
at
the
all
question
about this
has
matter.
expired. Senator